Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Outpost. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. But first and foremost, there's the whole situation with Wren obviously meeting with her mom, and obviously she's talking to her mom, trying to be like, obviously like, Yuvala's still trying to put this off like, oh, it's paradise. The fact of the matter is, even when people die, they die in bliss and paradise. So it's like, oh, they're in a good place when they die. It's like, oh, they're on that super high of like, oh, I'm so good. Everything's so great when they die. So they don't even die in pain. It's kind of what she's alluding to. But basically, it's like, oh, yeah, like, so many people have this upon them and it's like, it's all good. It's so wonderful. You know, obviously drinking the metaphorical cult Kool-Aid, but obviously for Wren it's like no, like because no one had a choice. When you bring people into the fold, they lose all choice. But it's like, well, the choices they have will lead them to anger and fighting and pain, and it's like, I'm ending all that. But it's like, yeah, but you're taking away what makes people them, the free will, the free choice to be who they want to be, do what they want to do. Yeah, people are capable of doing bad, but so are people capable of doing good too, and you're stripping everything that makes people their free will away. And obviously for Wren, it's like, oh, because this was forced upon him. It's like the kinj wasn't forced on anybody. It's like it was forced on you, and you had no idea what it was going to do. And Yuvala's making it seem like she didn't get the full scale of what it was capable of, but she's making it seem like she had some idea of what the white kinj was capable of. But obviously Wren gets close enough to use its syringe, but sadly, it doesn't work. It can only kill the offspring. It can't kill her. So that's what also makes me think, like, man, the kinj must not be able to... I mean, as we saw with Home Dude, that Primordial Night, it does seem like kinjs don't die. Like, I mean, obviously, it makes sense because, like, you know, when you kill someone, their kinj can pass on to you, because that was the whole thing that Red was trying to do last season to the blue kinj that Talon has. So it's like I said, it seems like these things don't like die. Like, I'm assuming, and this is what I brought up before, maybe they have to be out of a human host, or just a host in general, have to be outside of a host for a long period of time before they could actually die, or maybe they themselves can't die. I mean, that's the thing, like, well, because we haven't seen someone, well, I'm about to say, no, we have. We've seen one of the three die, and having their kinj taken from them, so... Because I was about to say, like, because we know Talon's not immortal. So that's why I'm also curious, like, why the white kinj is the only one that has the immortality. I'm guessing because I guess what it represents, it kind of represents its paradise, but it also represents life. But I guess it's like every person, maybe it's more like a situation of basically every person she brings under the fold gives her multiple lives. So maybe every time someone is part of her, like, she gets that many lives. So, like, I mean, we haven't seen any evidence that suggests that, but it just seemed like, obviously, the more people she gets under her control, the more powerful she becomes. So, like, the more that immortality kind of stretches. Maybe, maybe not. But, obviously, Wren's plan didn't work, and obviously this is the only means of saving her mom. But now I think finally Wren is kind of like, well, damn, I can't save my mom, especially now she's hearing like, oh, maybe my mom had more of an idea about this. Sadly, Wren gets, you know, infected. Then so does Mutt. Luckily, Talon and Zed end up saving him. They end up having to use the bomb to make their escape. And now it's like, well, what do we do now? And it's like, you know, I love the fact is that Zed was kind of like, well, you're the genius, why don't you make one? And Jansen's going off like, oh, you think I can make it from this, and this? And then Talon was like, can you? He was like, actually, he's like, you know, sometimes my genius surprises me sometimes. And it's just like, and I love how he looks so mad scientist-like when, you know, Janzo's getting in his bag, you know, doing his thing. So he makes a makeshift bomb. It's like, well, is it going to work? Well, we'll have to wait and see. So they wait until they can come back. Obviously, Yuvala using Wren ends up finding out that Gwen's alive. It's how is Gwen alive? We find out about 2, and then she's like, huh. And immediately I would have been like, I thought you'd be worried that 2, well, to be fair, 2 is a temporary solution because you'd have to kill someone else for you to have benefit of her kinj. Plus, it's not under the Outpost's control anymore. She's out there in the wild with some of her primordial people. But what I thought was interesting was her being like, oh, she could be useful. I'm like, how? If anything, she's kind of an enemy to you. Because now part of me is like, do you think, well, because to be fair, the kinjs don't work on other kinjs. So I'd assume that power of hers would not work on Zed or Talon. They have immunity because of their kinjs. So I'm assuming even 2's kinj won't work, so I would assume that still wouldn't even work against the white kinj either. Because I'm about to say, like, you are taking someone's soul, so maybe that is an option. Obviously, this presents some other stuff, but I'll get to that in a second. But the fact of the matter is, they, she said she's going to take advantage of that, and I don't know how. Maybe she'd be like, oh, side with me too. Like, the fact of the matter is we can rule this place together. I don't know. I don't know how you plan on taking advantage of her, because there's no way she's going to serve you. I mean, I granted it benefit her, sure, but I still don't see her submitting. Like, obviously, it's like she's used to running. Her and the others are so used to running things. They'd never willingly submit power to someone else. I mean, granted, she's in a position where she can't die. Plus, like, she's got so many damn people under her control. It's like, well, how many people do you have? You have like a handful. You have like probably like 6 or 7 soldiers with you. It's like, what do you like? And she has count hundreds, maybe even thousands of people under her control at this point. So it's like, how do you compare to that? So I don't know what she meant by that, but I'm really interested to see, like, what the hell does that mean? Cause part of me was wondering, like, because it's like, well, because also there's that. There's also, once again, we still don't even know where the hell 3 is. He's somewhere out there, like, laying low. I'm curious what the hell that whole situation turns into. Maybe he knows more. Maybe because 2 seems like she knows some stuff, obviously, but it's like, because obviously she brought her Black Kinch, which we'll get to that soon enough. But it's like, I'm curious, like, does he know something else that maybe she didn't know, or maybe 2 and 3 are about to meet up. Maybe she knows where he is, and they're about to join forces, because it's like, hey, if we join forces together, maybe we can change this situation back to us being in control. We'll see. So there's that. But they attempt to burn her, and it's like, all right, where's her head? I can't see her head, and she's screaming out in pain, and it is enough to stop all the other kinjis. So I guess if she receives enough pain, constant surge of pain, it's enough to stop her. But Talon, it looks like, because I was about to say, did you miss her or something? It's like, no, it looks like she pretty much lopped off her head. And it's like, oh, it was enough for, it was enough of an opportunity for Janzo to free Wren, but other than that, nope, she's alive and well, and it's like, well, now this makes it official. She's super immortal, and there is no killing her. Burning her and lopping off her head was not enough. Like, once again, I made the comparison before. She's like Deadpool, because Deadpool is like that too. Like, I'm not well versed in the comics, but from what I've heard, like, he can come back from like some severe, like, there being so little of him being scattered that he can come back type of thing. And it seems like she's in the same situation. Like, you'd probably have to blow her to like bits, like stuff a bomb inside of her type of situation. But even then, there's no guarantee that'd work. I mean, she was burned, had her head lopped off. You'd expect, because of zombie rules, having her head lopped off, like, that'd be enough. You probably, maybe you'd have to destroy her brain too. I don't know. Like, obviously they're probably not. Obviously, this is a show on this network. They'd never go that far, but I'm saying, like, if this was like probably some other network, you'd probably get severe with it, where you're like, oh, not just cut her head, I'll probably stab her through the head and destroy her brain, because obviously that's where the kinch is located. But it probably is able to just move out of the way when you start getting to it. Because I think, isn't that what Talons did when Reb tried to cut it out of her? It's like the kinch moved. I mean, it can move. It's capable of that to defend itself. So I don't know, but yep, that didn't work. So, and Janzo being like, hey, Munt, don't worry, I made a promise to you, I'll come back to save you. But what was interesting is when Janzo was like, Munt, there's enough, maybe because he's that strong-willed, but there's enough of Munt left in there that he stopped. She didn't say anything about it, but part of me is wondering, is like, could it be that her control over people, the more control she has, or the more people she has under her control, the less control she has over people? Or maybe is it just because Mutt is who he is, that, yeah, he can be a little simple-minded, but he has such a strong will that he was able to fight it, because it's like, I'm not going to hurt my brother. And it's like, and Jen's being like, brother, I promise you, I'm going to come back, I'm going to save you, Because the thing is, she didn't say anything, so it makes me wonder, there's no way you did it on purpose, like, so why are you so, okay, but I guess it's like, well, whatever, whether they'll be a part of this or not, or whether they end up dead, is beside the point. So I guess for her, it's like, it's all going to be, I'm gonna, I'm a god, so I'm gonna run things anyway. But it's just like, even when Monk was bowing down, it looked like, not like a look of bliss, it looked like he was kind of like saddened by that situation. So it's like, I don't know what, like I said, I don't know whether it's just because so many people are under her control, maybe Monk's a special case, like because his will is so strong. We'll see. But what I was bringing up earlier is, obviously we learned about the Black Kinj, so it's like, obviously, like, I figured this might come down to it, but I thought, like, well, for one, I figured Wren might not get the chance to use the syringe, or like something's going to happen to it. It's like, nope, she got the chance to use it, didn't work. The bomb, I was like, something's going to malfunction. Nope, it worked, it just didn't work, so it's like, okay, so the Black Kinj has to be it, but that's what I was saying. Kinjs block other kinjs, so what's to say that the Black Kinj will work? But maybe it's because, like, the Black Kinj and the White Kinj are opposite of each other. I mean, to be fair, this is like, once again, the Black Kinj is supposed to be straight up death. It's the death touch. You touch something, dead. So maybe because it's the opposite of the White Kinj, which the White Kinj is kind of a bit like life. Which, I mean, to be fair, you can make the argument, technically, two's kinj, green kinj is a life, because it takes someone else's soul and give it to someone else. But, so I don't know. I'd assume it's about, this is going to be about, I mean, to be fair, Talon has access to the Plains of Ash, so she'd probably have to go there with, like, Zed's help, because, I mean, I'm sure Zed doesn't know anything about it, the Black Kinj, but that could be their only option in this case. Probably have to ask Wren, so it's a good thing she's not being controlled. Maybe she might know something about it, but, I'm assuming this probably lead to Talon crossing paths with her dad potentially. We'll see. But it's like, it seems like the Black Kinj might be their only hope. But even then, it seems like, yeah, that's kind of a really, really last resort you want to use. Because notice Talon hasn't brought that up to anyone else, because it's like, it's such a dangerous thing that I'm sure for her it's like, yeah, I really don't want to use that unless I have to. But now it might be a situation where, well, we need to, because nothing in this world can kill her, so the Black Kinj might be the only option. But like I said, Kinjs block other Kinjs, but maybe the Black Kinj is so powerful that it outweighs every other Kinj. It's like, there's no protection from it. This is straight up death, and there's no blocking it. Even an immortal can't block it potentially, because it might not just be enough to kill it, because it's probably not just about killing the body, it's about killing the Kinj, and the Black Kinj can probably kill any Kinj. It's probably not like a thing of like, oh, my power can be used to kill, like any Kinj's power could be used to kill him. It's like, no, this is about killing the Kinj, with the Black Kinj. So we'll see on that front. On the other side of things, back at the Outpost, we have the complicated thing of, obviously, Tobin went off with Felista. And obviously they end up returning, and it's kind of what I thought they would do. They ended up sneaking in to his home and, his town, and ended up stealing all the food from back. Well, stealing the food and returning. But it was this interesting thing, because obviously Felista's, you can tell she's definitely wearing Tobin down a little bit, because he's, smiling a little bit around her. But it's like, why, it's like, I get it. She's so charming and beautiful, but it's like, no, what I love most about her is that she gave me a purpose. She made me feel useful. Basically that I could make my mark on the world, and that's what he loved about Rosman, that she made him feel kind of like, yeah, like I can rise to the occasion, I can do something, I can do this. And so at the same time, Garrett's there kind of coming up with an idea of extending the walls, that basically like a certain miles out, put another giant set of walls to kind of defend their space anymore, and even lock in more wildlife so that they can try and replenish their food sources. And obviously for Gwen, she talks about the fact is that even though she's missing it, which I didn't even think about the comparison, because it reminds me of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the whole Hive situation, which literally should have came to my mind, because this is literally called like a whole Hive mind, and that's literally what Hive's whole situation was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. If you've never seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that won't mean anything to you, but it's basically a similar thing to the whole Yavala situation, the White Kinj thing of like, it's a whole thing. Once again, if you haven't seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it probably won't matter. It was just an interesting thing of like, oh yeah, I can't believe I never put two and two together in that regard. But the point I was making is, obviously, she misses being under control. It's like, she's like, I knew that it would have killed me. I even knew that while I was under control, but for her it didn't matter. It's just like, it's like that seduction of like that peace and everything. Like, even, it's almost like an addict, where it's like you kind of remember that high, so you kind of getting that itch a little bit. But obviously she wouldn't want to be under control again, but there's still a part of her that would, And so I like the fact, for a moment there, I was like, oh, is there going to be like a Gwen and Garrett thing right there. I should also point this out too. I find it so interesting that I call her Gwen still. Like, every once in a blue moon, I'll call her Rosamund, but she'll always be Gwen to me, which I think is so interesting. We've known her real name as Rosamund since, like, a good chunk into season 1, and for the past 2 and some changed seasons, I've still called her Gwen. Speaking of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's kind of like the Skye and Daisy thing. Like, for, 2 seasons, she's Skye, and then, like, season 3 is like, no, start calling me Daisy because it's my real name. It's a whole thing. Once again, you've never seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it doesn't matter, but it's like, it's just that thing of, like, and now it's just like, I would never call Daisy Skye. It's been so ingrained. So that's why, I don't know. I mean, because so many people still refer to her as Gwen, because that's how so many people have known her for so long. So very few people call her Rosamund. The only person that calls her Rosamund is like Tobin and I think Felicity and like other people. But everyone else who got to know her as Gwen first, even Garrett calls her Gwen, you know? So I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. But it was actually something I was thinking about last episode, and then all of a sudden, you know, I figured I'd bring it up this episode as well. But the point I was making is I thought something was going to happen between Garrett and Gwen. I was like, oh, please don't do that. But then because they hug, because I expected like, oh, maybe it's like you're in a vulnerable spot, he's in a vulnerable spot, but he's like, I'm with Talon now. She's like, yeah, I know that. I just wanted a hug from an old friend. I was like, oh, okay. Because I was even kind of worried. I was reading the mood. I was like, oh, is something going to happen? Oh, never mind. Laying it down like, yeah, I'm with Talon now. It's like, no, and I want you two to be happy. Obviously, Gwen wasn't too happy with Tobin's return because it's like, you undermine my authority, because now it's like you and Felicity come back to look like the great heroes. Like, oh man, you guys are on top of everything. So it makes her look like, oh, I'm kind of makes her look a little bit like an incompetent leader, because now it makes her feel like, oh, you guys are using this to bolster your own reputation amongst, you know, the others so that you can kind of come here and run things. But Tobin's like, no, I'm loyal to you. It's like, he's like, you're being paranoid. She's like, maybe. But to be fair, she's been in, like, always been in a position where people have come in to try and undermine her power. So it's not that big of a stretch. But it's the thing of, like, obviously for Tobin, it's like, I love you, Gwen. I'm loyal to you, Rosamund. So it's like, but it's a complicated thing because he does feel that way. But obviously for Gwen, it's like, you know, here, take the ring back. Your wife deserves your mother's ring, not me. So that's obviously he never actually gave it to her, because Gwen brings it up later on. She's like, what ring? Nothing. So it's the back and forth between them. It's like, and even Felicity being like, oh yeah, also because of family relations, technically we're related. We're like cousins or whatnot. Which I'm like, that actually makes it worse. I mean, it's bad enough losing someone that you loved, them getting with someone else, but it's kind of even worse when it turns out, oh, said person they got with his family. There's a little bit of kind of, what the fuck? Like that. I think the dagger stabs a little bit, but obviously Rosamund's trying to keep her composure and everything. See what I'm doing? I'm going back and forth. I'm going to say Rosamund a couple times, and then I'm going to completely forget about it and just go back to calling her Gwen like I always do. I just know it. But she was just, you know, just the back and forth between them of like, you know, Gwen being like, oh, like I'm so, well, we already know who he's really in love with and stuff like that, because it's like, for her, it's like, no, I trust Tobin, because it's like, oh, you need a chief advisor, your last one died, right? And it's like, oh yeah, at first I was like, who are they talking about? I was like, all right, Eleanor. I almost completely forgot she had squirmed her way into that position. It's like, R.I.P. Eleanor. It's like, yeah, she was a very shrewd woman. So it's like, at first I thought Felicity was suggesting herself, but it's like, no, Tobin. It's like, of course you want Tobin in that position, because that way you can whisper in his ear, and that way you kind of have some power and control of your own. I mean, to be fair, that's what Gertie wanted in the first place, is Tobin to be in a high position so that she could take advantage of that situation. So it seemed like it was kind of a repeat of that. But it's like, yeah, like Gwen trusts Tobin. It's just not Felicity that she trusts. You know, and Gwen making that snide comment, Felicity kind of loses control a little bit, and the kinj activates. So it seems like she might be a little conscious of, because she's like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. So it's like she knows something's up. She doesn't realize what it is. It's actually interesting, because the two people that have gotten hit with it were people who've never suffered. Like if it was someone else in the Outpost, if it was like Genzo or Wren, they would immediately like, wait, I know this sensation. That's the red kinj. But Gwen and Tobin weren't around to feel that, so they wouldn't recognize it. Just like, oh, what's this sharp pain in my head? So they don't think much of it. So, but when it came time to pick an advisor, because Gwen had asked Garrett, well, what do you want to? Would Tobin work? And he's like, yeah, Tobin's loyal to you. He's a great strategist, and you know he'd be great. But the fact of the matter is, because he's with someone else, it probably would complicate things. And it's like, Gwen's like, I should put my feelings aside for the greater good. But it's like, when things are for your benefit, saying like, when things are better for you, they're better for everyone. And because of that, that ends up pushing Rosamund to say, hey, my chief advisor is Garrett. Even Garrett's like, wait, what? Obviously, Tobin was struck. Obviously, Felista not too happy about it, which... When you actually sit there and think about it, you're like, Felista does kind of remind you a little bit like who she is, how very shrewd she can be, and very blunt. You're like, she's actually very much like Eleanor. She's like, maybe that's what her role in this is, to be kind of like the new Eleanor, which I think would be pretty dope. We all need an Eleanor, and I think I didn't even think about that until just now. I think that's who Felista's kind of supposed to be, the new Eleanor, and I like that. You know, it's like, we need an Eleanor around, but nevertheless, I went on a huge tangent. I do apologize, but despite it all, Tobin's a little upset by it because it means like, wait, like he trusts her decision, because it's like Garrett does deserve it. Because obviously for Felista, it's like, oh, he's not from like a special like noble background or something. He's kind of a nobody, and it's like, well, yeah, but despite all that, he does. You know, he is well deserving of that job. And for Tobin, it's more so like the hurt that Rosamund would choose him over her. Like, it's not even like a romantic thing. It's just more of a nail in a coffin of where they stand. That she doesn't even trust me enough to take the job that I am good at. But it's like, hey, you know, so is Garrett. And obviously he kind of snaps on her about like, because obviously for him, he's like, I've spent so long being controlled by other people, whether it be Gertie, whether it be the kinj as well. It's like he's tired of being controlled. He's like, he didn't mean to snap at her. He recognizes like, hey, you do want what's best for me, but it's got to be me who makes that mark. I got to make it on my own. I can't like have it be through your influence or you pushing and prodding, which it's an interesting and complicated thing, because I think there is a part of Felista, much like Eleanor, that does have a heart of gold, that she does care, that she legitimately does love him like she said she does, but it's a complicated thing where it's like, well, because of that, you are trying to get back the person that you love, who's obviously in love with someone else. So there's that complicated thing, but you obviously too, there's always been something between you, and it's like but it also seems like, much like Eleanor, you are a bit of an opportunist, and it seems like you are taking advantage of this situation that you're like, you know, trying to better your situation as well. Because it's like, yeah, you guys might be cousins, but you're still not in the great standing that Rosamund is in. Because she's like, oh, like, I don't go around flaunting my lineage. And it's like, and Rosamund's like, oh, yeah, you only do that when it comes to threatening someone, right? But that's definitely going to be interesting. Once again, everyone's still unaware that she has a kinj and what that's going to turn into. Plus, Yavala's kind of made it a point like, oh, I'm still coming after you, Gwen, because I want you. I mean, to be fair, I guess it's like, why do you care? You're a god, so why do you need Gwen under your control? I guess because if you can get Rosamund under control, like, it's like, oh, you get Queen Rosamund under control, like, it makes it a lot easier to get other people to submit it, because you can get basically the Outpost under your control at that point in time, I guess. And also, like, her influence would spread everywhere else, and you'd get those people submitting, and it'd be easier for Yavala to go, oh, and you're infected, spread. I guess that's why I'm still wondering, like, why she still would need two as well. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this takes us. I'm assuming, because all the previous seasons were 13 episodes, this one's 13 as well, I believe. So it's like, we've only got like 3 episodes left. So I am so curious to see how all of this ends up playing out going forward into the next episode. Really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.